How much does draft capital matter when evaluating and predicting future success for tight ends? We're talking about that in today's video. If you're new to the channel, give us a like and subscribe. We put out fantasy and dynasty content all year long, and we are 2 days away from the NFL draft starting. We're all excited about it. Dynasty rookie drafts are coming up probably in May, and I decided to break down draft capital and look at each position, fantasy position, quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, and just see how much draft capital actually does matter. We hear it thrown out all the time, and we all kind of know first round players are going to do better than 6th and 7th round players. That's pretty logical, but I wanted to break it down by round and kind of look at what about like 3rd round versus 4th round, or 2nd round versus 5th round, and just see how much draft capital does matter kind of after the 1st round. If you haven't checked out the wide receiver and running back videos, they are already out, so check them out, and we are jumping into it. So first thing I'm going to show you here, I'm going to show you a few different charts and graphs. The first thing I'm going to show you is I went back and looked at every tight end drafted since 2010, and I divided them into 2 categories, hit and miss. To be considered a hit for a tight end, I needed 2 seasons of top 12 fantasy finishes in total points, or 1 season of top 5 finish. Yeah. Now for the draft class, I went through 2022. For 2021 and 2022, I kind of lowered the standards a little bit just because, they've only had 1 or 2 years in the NFL, and usually tight ends do take a few years to kind of get going. So I basically included anyone that's kind of flashed a little bit and shown potential. I kind of included them in this list. So I set the bar low for a reason, in order to encompass everyone, and trying to encompass especially the later round picks. If I set the bar too high, then we're going to get no later round picks considered as a hit. So here's the numbers here. You look at the top 12, tight ends drafted in the top 10, they are hitting at 100% rate, at a 100% rate. Now, that is only 3 tight ends: Eric Ebron, TJ Hawkinson, and Kyle Pitts. Yes, Eric Ebron was considered a hit because he had that 1 season where he was like tight end 3. So very low sample size, but they are hitting at a 100% rate. Outside the top 10, but still first round picks, are hitting at a lower rate, about 43%, I think it is. Yeah, 43%, which means they are a 57% bust, which is actually a little bit surprising, in my opinion. A little bit surprising. That's just above receivers, but much lower than running backs, first round running backs. And we look at overall tight ends and drafted in the 1st round here, 60% of them are considered hits, 40% are considered busts. So again, lower than what running backs are, first round running backs, higher than first round receivers. First round receivers are hitting at a 50% rate. First round running backs are hitting at a 74% rate, and first round tight ends are hitting at a 60% rate. So a little bit higher of a hit rate, but again, lower sample size by far, not even close comparing them to running backs or tight ends. What's interesting though is the hit rate for 2nd round picks is actually 43%. So 2nd round picks are hitting at the same rate as non-top 10 first round pick tight ends, which I did find interesting. And that is actually the highest for any position so far. Wide receivers are 2nd round receivers are hitting at a 31% rate. 2nd round running backs are hitting at a 41% rate. 2nd round tight ends are hitting at a 43% rate. Then we see the numbers drop off a bit. 3rd round, they're hitting at only a 15% rate. So, that is lower than both running backs and tight ends. Running backs drafted in the 3rd round are hitting at a 33% rate, and receivers in the 3rd round are hitting at a 24% rate. So much lower of a hit rate for 3rd round tight ends. Now, I did continue here. I looked at rounds 4 through 6, and as you would expect, the numbers kind of continue to drop. Actually, 4th round picks at tight end are more successful than 3rd round picks. I don't exactly know why, but 4th round picks at tight ends are, just 1 second here, they are hitting at a 28% rate, which I believe is the highest out of any of the positions I've looked at so far. Yeah, it is the highest. Receivers are only 3%. And running backs are 12%. So fourth round tight ends are still pretty good draft capital for tight ends, is what I'm learning. I don't think we need to be too worried about if a tight end goes in the third or fourth round as much as we do with the other positions, at least with wide receivers. As you can see, though, anyone drafted fifth round or later is there's only been one tight end drafted fifth round or later since 2010 that's been considered successful. That's George Kittle. George Kittle is the only tight end in the fifth, sixth, or seventh round that's been considered a hit up until this point. So obviously we're not getting good numbers there for tight ends. So it is a little bit of a death note if a tight end's drafted in the fifth, sixth, or seventh round. You can probably avoid those guys in your dynasty rookie drafts altogether. Unless you really, really like someone and you think they're talented, then go with who you picked. Now I broke it down even further here, because there are tight ends who do have 1 year wonders, right? And those are still valuable, right? We can't just ignore the guys that give you one good year of production, but not multiple. So what I did is I went back and looked from 2014 to 2023, so 10 years of data here. I looked at all the tight ends, starting with finishing in the top five. All the tight ends that finished top five total fantasy points in a season. And I did top five because that's kind of really the true difference makers are the guys finishing in the top five. And from what you can see from here, we have 8% of those top five finishes are coming from guys drafted in the top 10, which is actually a pretty good number considering there's only 3 tight ends that have been drafted in the top 10. Overall, first round tight ends are making up 20% of the top 5 finishes for tight ends. So that's a little interesting because if you look at the top 12 finishes for running backs, we're at over 30%. Our first round picks, and for receivers we're at almost 40%. So there's a lot less first round tight ends producing elite seasons compared to running back and wide receivers. And a big part of that is because what you see here in the third round. But real quick, 18% are coming in the second round, and then 34% of the top 5 fantasy finishes are tight ends drafted in the third round since 2014. That's pretty impressive in my opinion. Third round pick. So what it means to me is, we need to be careful with tight ends drafted in the first round. Doesn't mean they're going to be, they're going to hit, and doesn't mean they're going to be super productive. And we can get a lot of production from second and third round picks. You just look here, second and third round picks, those two are over half of the tight ends finishing in the top 5. And then, as you would expect, we don't get a whole lot of production, although, we get 14, 16, 28% also of tight ends. 28% of them are coming in the fourth round or later, including undrafted. No one in the seventh round, by the way. Only fourth, fifth, sixth, and undrafted. So, what it tells me is, guys drafted day 2 or later, or third round or later, we should say, guys drafted third round or later are making up 60% of the top 5 finishes for tight ends. You wouldn't expect that. You think it would be very heavily towards the first round and second round picks. Again, for reference, running backs drafted in the first or second round are accounting for roughly 57% of the top 12 finishes. Wide receivers drafted in the first and second round are roughly accounting for about 65% of the top 12 finishes, and tight ends are a lot lower. Yeah, a lot lower, less than 40%. So keep that in mind when it comes to your dynasty rookie drafts. One more chart I am going to show you here is the tight ends drafted. The tight ends finishing top 12. This does include the top 5 and anyone in the top 12, 1 through 12. And we see kind of similar numbers here. A little bit a little bit lower towards the third round picks and second round picks get a little bit higher. But tight ends finishing top 12 since 2014. Yeah, tight ends finishing top 12 since 2014 are finishing we have 20% of them are first round picks, another 26% are second round picks, and almost 27% of them are third round picks. So we have over 50% of tight ends finishing in the top 12 are actually from the second or third round. Yeah, only 20% are coming from first round. Yeah, and 45% of them are coming from first or second round. So again, still getting a lot of production from tight ends drafted in the third round or beyond. As you can see here, undrafted third round picks. These guys are making up from third round pick to undrafted here. They're making up just over 50% of the tight ends finishing in the top 12. So I think it's pretty telling. I think it teaches us that, we don't necessarily, even though it's rare to find tight ends in the first round, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to draft the first round tight ends and you have to spend a premium pick on first round tight ends. Tight ends I remember Dalton Kincaid last year was a first round rookie pick, and it might be better to wait. It might be better to take a shot at maybe a tight end drafted in the second or third round, especially compared to other positions, right? Other positions are heavily weighted towards first and second round picks. Especially wide receivers, right? What it's teaching me is if you want a productive receiver, you kind of need to take one in the second or third round. Yeah. 40% of tight ends finishing in the top 24 are, 65% of tight ends drafted in the first or second round. 65% of wide receivers finishing top 24 are drafted in the first or second round. So it's heavily skewed towards first and second round picks. Tight ends are. Running backs kind of are, but are a little bit less than tight ends. So again, it's just teaching me you can find value at tight end later on in the draft. Now, draft capital does matter a little bit for tight ends, but not as much as the other positions. That's all I have for you guys today. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll be back looking at the quarterback position next. So appreciate it. Catch you guys in the next video.